Hello and welcome all of you out there, and I'm back after a short break. I had some dental work going on, but I won't get into it. Let's just get into what's the most enjoyable Ark Tames out there, because why not? In at number 10, I simply had to put the Vonaur. I really do love this as an Ark creature, and sort of just as a general concept. It really does work well with its spine attack abilities, just being one of the most enjoyable in my opinion. And it's sort of sad that Wildcard never really revisited this creature and sort of added something similar to it, but it also is technically a good thing too. It stands by its own, and with the Vonaurs on Genesis Part 2, you've got some even better ones out there if you wish to have the upgraded version, but both still offer a lot of versatility in the combat scene. Of course, you wouldn't use them that close to a theory, but you know, it's just for proof of concept in the B-roll. And their stamina also goes on for absolutely ages. You're going to have no problems with stamina drain on a creature like this. They truly are one of the most enjoyable in my opinion. Next up, I've decided to put the Rhogatha, and although not a big favourite of mine, just for other reasons, which I won't get into today because I still really like the creature and it's not really valid in my opinion, but my brain is my brain. This creature just can do an incredible amount, and that ability to pick up just such large creatures still always is fascinating and enjoyable to me. Like picking up Rexes and Paraceratheriums and things like that, that just seems really insane to me, and it excites me every time I see one of these things do that, or just generally when I do it, because you always think of carrying creatures like that in a cryopod or soul traps, because who really uses cryopods unless you're playing on official or on console? Just use soul traps. They're just far better. They are a little bit rare sometimes, I find, to actually tame, and the tame method is pretty enjoyable too, as long as you get it right. It's exactly the same as the Reaper tame method, except it just impregnates a dino instead of your own self, and you're also going to need a bunch of resources, which will appear on screen at some point, rather than the XP. So the tame method, in my opinion, isn't quite as enjoyable as the Reaper, but that creature's later on the list, and I think we'll talk about this thing a little bit later, but still a very enjoyable creature to ride around on, deal damage with, and pick up insanely large creatures with. Next up, I've decided to put the Gasbags on the list, as the idea of the Gasbags still just really excites me as an Ark player, and it's sort of comedically funny in the way it moves. It's just basically passing gas as it moves through the sky, because it doesn't actually fly in the sense of using its wings. It simply uses its air, which it fills up through its mouth. So, you know, it's a funny concept from Wildcard, and I really enjoy it. And once you get round controlling one, it can be a very fun experience to have around friends. And even if you're not great at flying one like I was in the B-roll, I should really update this at some point, you can still have a heck of a time as well, as long as you don't end up losing everything and getting things killed, because there obviously is a probability to some extent, which, you know, you always got to be careful out there. Ark is Ark at the end of the day, and it will throw you under the bus quite a lot. This is a really great traveller of heavy things, though. It has a great amount of weight, and it flies at quite a decent speed. Doesn't even need a saddle. The saddle's only there if you want to bring a mate along with you, which is why I said it's quite good if you've got a friend too. Just really adds to the enjoyable level of this creature, but also just playing games with your friends is generally more enjoyable than just playing it by yourself. In at number 7, we've got the Baryonyx, and I simply have to put this creature here, at least in my opinion, because of the huge experience that I've had with a creature like this. It really does excite me as an Ark tame. It is such an easy one, and yet so useful and versatile to the general Ark player. A lot can be done with a Baryonyx that really can't be done with other creatures, at least within the range of when you're going to be taming this thing. It saddles dirt cheap as well. It is an insanely great caving mount, capable of fitting into any sort of cave with absolute ease, apart from the artifacts of Skylord, but basically a dung beetle's not even going to fit in that either. You've got to crouch through bits of that. There's not really a point of bringing creatures into that cave, but when you do bring this into any sort of cave, you're going to demolish all creatures that you can find in the area. You'll have absolutely no issues with that whatsoever. You're going to tower through tons and tons of creatures and just have no issues whatsoever, health wise and damage wise, because they really do pack. They're great at swimming as well. With their spin attack, they can stun creatures like the size of Megalodon. They truly are fantastic tames, really enjoyable to ride on, and just generally really enjoyable creatures. Coming up next, we have got the Desmodus, and for me, is there really anything more fun than just a blood bag farm that can also do 30% of your tames with a click of a button. It is just such an enjoyable creature to have around. The Sanguine Elixir, again, 30% of your tame is done like that with a click of a button, and their blood bag farms. And for a creature later on the list, that is going to be an extremely useful thing for me. Might not be quite for you, but definitely for me. But even if you're thinking of taming more Desmoduses, it's still going to be useful to you. They have the glide ability as well, and they are rapidly fast flies. You're never going to be let down by the speed of these things, at least I'm not in any sense. And they can also grapple onto walls, vertical surfaces, or ceilings, like a Tapijara, which is another quite nice creature, although I think I'm not really too fond on it. The Desmodus is definitely a far better creature in my eye. Spawns on Fjorda, really isn't too difficult to tame. Your first one is obviously going to be the hardest, but then you've got a blood bag farm, so it really isn't going to be too difficult for all the others. Just great flyers, great use for PvP, great use for PvE. And at number 5, we have got the Astrodelphus, and I'm also going to put the Rhogatha here as sort of a side note, but I really love both of these creatures as they are just such fast flies. They are so rapid, like genuinely you can get a lot done with the speed of these things. You can traverse maps with absolute ease. You should have no issues whatsoever, especially in just generally getting from A to B really quickly. Even in the damage department too, they excel with all of their lasers or just a bomb firing apparatus. And although maybe there's a little bit more gauge on how fast you're going on the Rhogatha, in my opinion the Astrodelphus is just more of the smoother flyer, although its saddle is unlocked a little bit later on, and arguably its tame method's harder, although I've always found it a bit easier in my opinion, because Element is found everywhere on Gen 2, and if you just do it right and take precautions for void roams in the area, you really should have no issues, even getting one of these things quite early on. In the early days of the channel, I also made a guide to taming one of these things. It's an absolutely terrible video, but if you want to check it out, then you can add to about the 20 views that it's got at the moment. It came out it came out over a year ago now. Actually, maybe don't look up, that's an embarrassing time in my channel. In number 4, we have got the Reaper, and this it's just one of those creatures where it's like, can anything really get better than a Xenomorph alien? Obviously, apart from the creature which are in the 1, 2, and 3 spots, at least for me. Yeah, this thing really is up there when it comes into enjoyable Ark Tames. It is such a great marathon to tame one of these things with its, some may say, laboriously long method, and also quite difficult one too, but I find it really isn't too bad once you get into it. And if it all goes well for you, which if you prepare enough it should, unless Ark's just being Ark and it absolutely ruins everything for you, then it should be a reasonably enjoyable experience. Simply trap it and get its health below 1000, that being a Reaper Queen of course, and then you need to let it impregnate you, get loads of XP, and then once your Reaper baby is born, try and claim that thing. Some Reaper pheromones will help if that baby's still trying to kill you, because it probably will, to be honest. They're not strictly necessary, at least I'm pretty sure, so I don't think you have to feed them to it early on, but I would keep them there for safe measure. They're not quite the hardest things to get, but it will take a little bit of elbow grease. But then you got yourself a cool Reaper, and it's such a great arc of progression. I love taming these things every single time on AB. Yes, they can be easily obtained on Gen 2, but I don't really see the fun in that, because it's really just not difficult in my opinion, and I love the progression. In at number 3, we have got the Maewing, and this is so enjoyable to me as, come on, look at firstly just how good this thing's model is. I love the design of this creature. It's sort of like a flying sky platypus, and it's really captured the hearts of many Ark players ever since its release. But also why it's just so enjoyable is that it's just so fast. It's like honestly insane. This thing travels at such a pace, basically nothing can keep up to it unless it's had insane movement speed levels put into it, which isn't possible on basically all these servers out there, because little have fly speed leveling. I'm also pro fly speed leveling, by the way, if you're wondering. I think Ark should really bring it back. I guess, yeah, it was a little bit game breaking, but maybe set a limit on it for those official servers, like 135% or 150% or something like that, because it really does add a nice dynamic. Yeah, 1000 movement speed Maewings would be absolutely insane, and I've tested them out on some single player servers, and they are so fun to ride on when they're that speed, but also a little bit not, because you just get stuck in everything. That's a portable feeding trough, so it is an enjoyable thing for breeders. They're pretty decent swimmers too, and they can gather berries, but the main reason why they're here is just the Maewings are so good with their speed, it's honestly insane. In number 2, I've decided to put the Bloodstalker, as this is my favourite all-time, just basically general travelling mount out there. While I love the Maewing and it's got loads of great speed on it, for just generally all travel combined, that including underwater travel especially, because I do actually spend quite a lot of time down there. I don't know why I've been doing that as of late, but I'm just really enjoying it, I guess. Just for general travel on the surface as well, they work so effectively, and they are my favourite travel mount at the moment. Not only can you see all the aggros of the creatures, but they are fast in literally any environment, underwater and on land. Maybe not in lava, but I don't think any creature is, apart from the Magmasaur, but that's not on the list because it really isn't one of my favourites out there, at least just generally in my opinion. But I do find these things to be very quick and agile in basically every environment that you're going to face. Again, the underwater environment travel of this creature is just insane, and that is one of the main reasons why I'm putting it here, as yes, a Basilow is immune to all the electric eels and jellyfish, but you can easily skip away from them with a creature like this, and you can see if that aggroed onto you well before they even reach you, which is why these things are just amazing. There's just so much peace of mind put into this creature, and they've really seemingly been so well designed for all of these environments, and I just love them dearly, especially with the Desmodus being bloodback farms. I can tame as many of these things really as I want, but usually I'll just settle for one high level, maybe get another one, and then I've got a breeding pair, and then I'll breed them together, and then just take the baby of that, ride it around, and then if it dies, I'll just breed those 2 Bloodstalkers together again, and boom, I've got another Bloodstalker. But I'll usually keep a couple of babies spare, because you should always keep some spare of your favourite dinos. And coming in at number 1, we've got the Deinonychus. I really can't find anything that is more enjoyable just as a general creature to me like the Deinonychus. It is such a good one for any kind of boss fight. It just deals a heck of a lot of damage really, and with the bleed ability being inflicted on bosses as well, it is an all gore out fight, and I really do like these creatures for that. It adds just a sort of comicness to these creatures, and that's something which I really enjoy. Just there's blood spewing absolutely everywhere on this Bronto, and soon enough it is very much dead. With the pack buff too, you are buffed like absolute hell, and you've got tons of these things going after you as well, obviously along with you as sort of your pack mates, to help those boss fights go by as quickly as possible. Even for longer ones like the Master Controller, I find they still work well. Yes, a couple of health mutations are probably required, but it's not the hardest thing in the world to get those done, at least from my experience. Yes, on official everything it's still going to be a pain, but I'm working with 2.5x rates here with 5x on breeding, because I don't like to wait quite that long. Because a Giga taking a week on official is something which I really don't want. That's raising time, by the way. They can also scale any kind of wall or vertical surface with absolute ease. The climbing and the sort of parkour that these creatures offer is one which is sort of highly sought after. The Thyla does it very well too, but the Deinonychus is just a better creature overall. The only thing it lacks is that underwater travel, but realistically I'm not going to be using it for that. I'm just using it for everything else. The top 10 most amazing Ark Tames. In at number 10 we've got the Uteranus, and I'm putting this creature here because everyone really realistically does use the UT in a given boss battle scenario. You'll use it with that roar that it has, which essentially buffs your own creatures up, and also they will take less damage. It is called the Courage Roar, and they also do have a Fear Roar as well, although that's not really commonly used as it does have a size limit. But still, if someone's trying to raid your base on a Pteranodon, you can actually use that Fear Roar, and that player will lose complete control of the flyer that they're riding. Or it could be a glider in the case if maybe they're on one of those smaller other gliders. Just some nice PvP tips for you people out there if you know you're in need of that, because sometimes you might be in a scenario where you have a UT and you need to get a Pteranodon away from your base with an enemy player on it. Just simply use that Fear Roar. But I also find they're great general carnivores as well. They have quite a lot of speed and mobility on them, which you don't really get on a Rex. Yes, the Rex is a great boss creature, but still, it doesn't really stand. It's one of those amazing Ark Tames for me because it's not really as versatile, and some people might forget about the UT apart from those other, that boss use, of course, that I already mentioned, because you really can get a lot out of this creature, and it just people generally don't, and that's what I don't like about this creature, or what I don't like the outlook on these creatures. People don't really use it as much as they should in the uses that I think it really works in. So continuing on, we have got the Crystal Wyvern, and this could be of any variety, just whichever one you find preferable. For me, it is the Blood Crystal Wyvern. I know there isn't a Blood Crystal Wyvern here, this is simply just a tropical one, but I know a lot of you down in the comments have been really liking the Ember Crystal Wyverns, and I do definitely agree with that. They are quite a nice wyvern to have. And the reason why I say these are so much more amazing than just the regular old wyvern is I find there's a lot more variety, and also just generally they have nicer special abilities. Yes, breathing fire or lightning or poison or ice is still definitely something cool and useful, but they're a lot more inventive with the Crystal Wyvern abilities, and I find, considering just how easy they are to tame compared to the normal Wyvern, it really is a no-brainer just to get these instead. Yes, they are locked behind kind of a level 60 barrier, and you need to get that Primal Crystal, so you need to knock out a Crystal Wyvern first, but I don't find that to be too much of an issue when taming these things. I really don't struggle with it as much as raiding a Wyvern Trench. And yes, you can do it with a Field Hawk, and it's not the hardest thing in the world. You can do it with the Griffin relatively easily as well. But then you've also got to go through the whole raising process, and really it's a lot of time and effort you have to put into it, especially on official. Whereas with these creatures, yes, maybe getting to the level 60 might be a little bit of a challenge, but as soon as that passive tame is finished with that Primal Crystal, you've got yourself one of these things, and they really are just great flyers to have. It's 100% worth getting one. So the Snow Owl, I find, often is very much used, but also not often talked about in a way, because I find that, yes, loads of people use this thing, but they don't talk about it as much as they should, just considering how great this creature is. As some might say, well, there's just simply better creatures out there, and I will agree, it's not the cream of the crop, it's not the best art creature out there, but it definitely is one of those most amazing ones in my opinion. But obviously, considering that we're only in the number 8 spot, there is still going to be a lot more to come. With this creature, namely, they do have the Dive Bomb ability, which you can also find on the Desmodus and the Griffin, a terrific ability which I really do love, as it vastly increases the speed that a flyer can travel at, even if they're just general coasting in terms of their flying is not the fastest. If the RG had this ability, it would be absolutely insane. The RG is actually later on in the list, by the way, if you're wondering about that thing. They also do have, not the RG, the Snow Owl in this case, you can probably tell that already. They have a heat-seeking UV ability where, you know, you can spot out and scout out any creature. Just apply this to what you really think it would be. And also they can heal any kind of creature as well, that being your own creatures, wild creatures, or tamed ones. It goes around full circle. And also this is really useful as well if you're knocking out a wild creature and yeah, its health is simply too low. You've pumped so many tranks into it that its health is really low, but also it's still not knocked out yet. And sometimes you might get this on some wrecks, as if they've been battling stuff before, their health is already quite low, and you start knocking them out and it really gets to a stage where you can't put any more tranks into them. Then simply use one of these things to heal them back up, and you will not regret the benefits of this, because then the torpor won't go down so much where you have to wait. And also sometimes if you go out of render distance on single player, this actually always happens on single player, if you go out of render, they're not going to keep healing up on servers. You can maybe just log off and then log back on, but still there's a little bit of inconvenience in that. Obviously you can also just heal up your own creatures as well in whatever situation that you might find yourself in. But also the Snow Owl pellets can be used a lot for getting great loot out of gadgets. I feel like I said also a lot on that, but anyway, continuing on with the list. So in at number 7 we've got the Reaper. It feels a little bit weird to be putting this creature in at number 7, but considering I don't really use it as much, and yes, it really fits into its map perfectly and all of that, I kind of have to degrade it slightly where it is on the list, because personally I am also factoring just generally how amazing these creatures are to use and how often I kind of use them as well. Yes, I'm slightly shifting the word around a bit, as you could say, well, this is amazing creature to tame, and it's truly amazing because it deals loads of damage and it just really is a great creature to have. But personally it's not one of my favorites in regard of just general use. Yes, I'll use it tons on a map like Arboration, or on Gen 2 as well. I use it a fair bit considering they spawn on the map, but I don't tend to transfer these across maps just to use one of these things. I don't like them quite that much, although there is really no better feeling than taming a Reaper for the first time, especially on Operation, because there is a long process in it, and it would be a big shame to not include them on the list, considering just how cool and amazing they look, just how great they are as creatures. They deal tons of damage, they really do pack a lot of punch, and they can travel quite far as well, almost maybe as far as a Carcanos can throw some kind of Dodo or Literature. So that's another pretty amazing creature as well, although it is not making the list today, but I guess they got a little brief honourable mention. In this list, the Shadowmane really did need to be talked about. Come on, this creature is packed full of all kinds of abilities. It does deserve to be here. Firstly, it is an extremely mobile creature for its size, and yes, while the Thyla does a similar sort of thing, in a way it doesn't really compare to the amount of height that you can get out of this thing. There is a serious amount of mobility withheld, and yes, it cannot climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. Once you see this jump in the B-roll here, you'll realise that you're never going to need any of that. It can really jump to insane heights, and it's actually still a little bit crazy to me every time I do it, because although these are amazing creatures, I don't actually use these the most often. I've kind of come off them a little bit recently, but I've also kind of been coming off Ark a bit recently. I haven't really been playing a lot since ASA came out, really, actually, because I've kind of been put off because of the game a little bit. They're also really great underwater tames though, and they have the hydration buff, they can go invisible, they have the pack buff, they're great for bosses, and they have natural armor too. The only real not amazing thing about them is just the horrible taming method, which I will still never like to this day. In at number 5, we've got the Baryonyx. This creature definitely does deserve to be here. It is my all-time favourite caving creature, and it really does have a lot going for it. Namely, obviously, that caving ability, which basically means it is the perfect size to fit into any cave, and with that size as well, it also packs enough punch. Also, don't mind about all the dead creatures that you're probably seeing around the map. You'll see a dead Yuti later in this B-roll. I heard someone wondering about that last time. Yes, the B-rolls are recorded within quick succession, and after I'm done with the B-roll, the creatures do sadly die with a command, which I'm pretty sure it's just kill, isn't it? That's the command you put in to kill creatures. Also, on top of that as well, these are really fast, speedy creatures, and they're great in the water too, with that spin attack on the right click as well. You can summon creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, which just generally makes them quite good for underwater caving as well. They're already great just for regular caving, but now for underwater caving too. Well, they have been for a while, ever since they released, because they are just generally really great underwater tames. Some people don't really like them as much, as they say they only really eat fish, and fish is a bit of an annoying thing to get. Coelacanths are absolutely everywhere if you know where to look for them. That really is not an issue, which you should be running into. So the Desmodus is one of those creatures where it has to be on an amazing creatures list. Not only can it make Sanguine Elixir, which is an absolute feat for doing any kind of tames, essentially doing 30% of it for you with a click of a button, they are also blood bag farms, and also you can just with that tame even more Desmoduses and also Bloodstalkers. And I'm going to give the Bloodstalker an honourable mention here as well, as it really is truly an amazing creature for me. I just couldn't find a place to fit it on the list today, so I didn't, but personally I would say it deserves to be in the realms of the number 5 to number 3 spot, and it really does, in my opinion, deserve to be here. It's just there's some other creatures which I think deserve it slightly more, and I put them there instead, but I decided I'd talk about it a little bit because it's really just a great underwater mount and I love it so much. It's generally a great travel mount. It's really cool model design, generally amazing creatures to use. Once you've got over the learning curve of controlling one, they are fabulous. Now, just a little brief thing to finish on the Desmodus. They are also gliders. They can grip onto any kind of wall, vertical surface like the Tapijara, even just ceilings, and they can pick players off mounts with absolute ease for you PvP players out there. Now, the RG has always been an all-time favourite of mine, so I had to include it in at the number 3 spot on the list. This creature has driven me through many years of Ark, and at this point, almost a decade. These creatures are just one of my favourites, and although there are some slightly better creatures for travel and just with general amazingness in the RG, they really do deserve to be on here for their massive contribution to my Ark playing over the years. I always get so much nostalgia when riding an RG as well, or just when watching videos of people on RGs, and especially that old RG model. Yes, albeit a lot worse than the new one. has a lot of nostalgia in it. Either way, the RG is like the best metal carrier out there, having weight reduction on things like metal, crystal, and obsidian. I'm pretty sure it's 50%, although my numbers can be a little bit out to date sometimes because I'm not really playing a lot of Ark at the moment. Like I have said, ever since ASA came out, I've just been a little bit off put by Ark in general. But they can also pick up tons of creatures as well, which really does play to their benefit. You pair them with an Anki and a Dodic, you can get loads of metal, stone, crystal, obsidian, all of those resources which you really do need. They also have a smithy as a saddle, so if you've ever done some caving, which I like to do a lot, then you can just repair your armor if those pesky ass players have got it, or if any of your pikes or gear or swords or things like that have been broken, you can easily repair them as long as you've got some metal ingots and the saddle of the RG, because I don't like to go back to my base just to repair some armor because I usually decays in quick succession. And they also have a nice healing regen thing. Then at number 2 we've got the Maewing, and this is really the king of travel, and it only just scrapes past the RG. I was tempted to put the RG in at the number 2 spot because of just how amazing that creature is, but the Maewing is just so much more amazing at speed and ease of travel that it needs to be here, as a lot of the recent Ark playing that I've done, or the scarcity of recent Ark playing that I've been doing, has been just generally a lot of travelling and exploring maps. I know it's not really the thing that you're going to be doing the most, but travelling from A to B is definitely something which you're going to need to do in Ark a lot, and that this really is the best creature out there for it. It's so quick, so mobile, so easy to use once you've just got over that first general learning curve, and it can be used really on any map, and it works just fantastically. Yes, on Operation, a Rock Drake is going to do better, but they really don't need a lot of elevation to work like the Rock Drake does, which is obviously why they're much more of a favourite when it comes to travel. They can also skim across the top of the water, they're pretty good swimmers as well. They also are a portable feeding trough for you breeders out there, and they're not the worst berry gatherers too, so you've really got a lot of abilities in one. And considering the saddle unlocks at level 18, it is really a no-brainer to put them in at the number 2 spot. And at number 1 is the Deinonychus, and this always tops my lists. I don't know what it is for me, but I do know what it is because I put it here. I don't know why. I've said that twice on some lists now. But this creature is just so good as a boss creature, and so good as a general travel mount. Yes, maybe not as great as the Maewing. I've been using the Maewing a lot recently, but I've still been using the Deinonychus a lot just for land travel and a bit more deeper and in-depth exploration instead of just flying around the map just like a madman. They also can grapple onto creatures and deal tons of bleed damage to them, which is obviously extremely useful, especially in boss fights, as it actually still does bleed damage to bosses, which as far as I'm concerned, no other Ark creature does. They also have the pack buff as well, which again is going to boost them even more in boss fighting scenarios. They really are the go-to for that. Unless you're on extinction, then use a Giga or a Carcharodontaurus. Probably Carcharodontaurus because their health is a lot more reliable, as they do not have the rage buff. Again, they're two great, amazing creatures as well, and the Giga has really been through a lot with me, and I guess I'll give it a brief honourable mention here as well, because they really do deserve to be in this list somewhere, except I just couldn't really find a place considering all the other creatures that I put on this list instead, because I just find all of those to be more amazing to me. Also, the Deinonychus on top of this takes no fall damage whatsoever, and it can climb up any kind of wall or vertical surface like the Thyla can. Not quite as elegant as a solution, but I still really don't mind it whatsoever, and it works perfectly for me. This is the most amazing Ark creature out there, with no doubts. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Macy-Juski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.